One of the coolest things about our planet is how dirt piles up over time and buries things. This means that future people can dig down and explore the past, perfectly preserved underground. Yep, that's right. In 1,000 years, some archaeologists will probably be given guided tours of your man cave. But not everything they find is so easy to explain. In fact, some things were supposed to stay hidden. From the sickly sarcophagus to the mummified man, here's 20 horrifying archaeological discoveries. Number 20. The Black Sarcophagus. A mysterious black granite casket discovered in Egypt's Alexandria has been opened. It dates back to 332 BC, when Alexander the Great conquered the region. When the find was made public earlier this month, there was speculation that the massive coffin held Alexander's skeletons, and that opening the sealed and foreboding-looking casket would set off a curse. Unless smelling sewage causes some sort of distress, we seem to be okay. Can't think of any recent world curses, can you? Oh, wait a sec. Anyway, 3 skeletons as well as sewage were found within the sarcophagus by archaeologists. They might be the bones of warriors, according to Egypt's Antiquities Ministry. According to photographs released by the ministry, the sarcophagus is filled with liquid sewage that must have spilled in at some point. Although the skeletal remains are still being analyzed, preliminary findings suggest that one of the persons found in the tomb was killed by an arrow. So far, no inscriptions or works of art have been uncovered on the outside or inside of the sarcophagus. What were the names of these 3 people? What year did they pass away? What became of them? What was the point of burying them in a colossal sarcophagus? What were they buried with, if anything? And how did the tomb get so flooded with sewage? These questions remain unanswered, and the mystery surrounding the black sarcophagus continues. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping. Time for the rare topic. One archaeologist in Egypt left his official team and stayed up at night doing his own dig in a restricted area not far from the pyramids. What harm could it do? Maybe he'd find the next pharaoh's tomb and become world famous, but in this case, an archaeologist discovers what no one was supposed to see. That's right, it seems the alien theories were true as he dug up an alien hand from one alien who was injured in the building. Authorities want to keep it a secret from regular people, but what do you think? Is our source correct? Did aliens build the pyramids? As always, comment down below with the hashtag #RareTopic, and let us know your opinion in relation to what we just showed on screen. Let's move on to the next one. Number 19. Poland Man. Poland Man is a naturally mummified man discovered in peat bogs in northern Europe. Locals in Tolland, Denmark, discovered his bones while collecting peat for firewood in 1950. Due to his remarkable condition of preservation, the villagers initially mistook him for a recent murder victim, and after much debate, the local police were sent to investigate. The sight of the bones confused the cops, so they asked a scientist, named P.V. Glob, to come examine what they had discovered. When Glob realized it was an ancient burial, he took efforts to remove the bones for further investigation. The victim was discovered nude, with the exception of a leather helmet and a thick belt around his waist, as well as a rope firmly wrapped around his neck. This Iron Age man was hung in what is now commonly believed to be a ritual sacrifice, according to later research. The corpse of Tolland Man was rebuilt for the show, which is currently on display at the Silkeborg Museum in Denmark. His face has an extraordinary degree of detail. His chin stubble, eyelashes, and wrinkles are all meticulously groomed. Visitors may gaze into this ancient violence victim's relatively peaceful expression, while the rope that was used to end his life is still wrapped around his neck. Number 18. The Screaming Mummies. The Screaming Mummy was discovered in 1881. She was buried at Deir el Royal Bahari's Keshet, where priests from the 21st and 22nd dynasties had buried the mummified bones of deceased royals so tomb robbers wouldn't find them. The 3,000-year-old mummy was recently re-examined by Egyptologist Zahi Hawass and Cairo University professor of radiology Sahar Salim. According to Hawass, the cause of death for unknown woman A was revealed to be coronary artery atherosclerosis, which struck her with a fast and fatal heart attack. The princess, who was in her 60s at the time, died in the same cross-legged position in which she was mummified, according to Hawass. He also believes as she inclined her head to the side post-mortem, her jaw dropped and her face was locked in that posture due to rigor mortis. Before it began to relax or decay, the body was supposedly mummified quickly while it was still in rigor mortis. Another hypothesis is that, owing to rigor mortis, the mouth was stuck in a scream, and the embalmers were unable to wrap it firmly enough to realign her jaw. Many others, on the other hand, believe that this is a really cursed mummy who has set our world on a course to catastrophe. Number 17. The Moai Statues. The Easter Island heads, commonly known as the Moai, are monoliths sculpted by Rapa Nui people on Easter Island, a Polynesia island. The work was completed between 1250 and 1500, and it consists of human sculptures with enormous heads that account for 38% of the statue's overall size. They are depictions of significant ancestors who have been deified. The majority of the sculptures are located near the stone quarry from where they were dug, while the others are scattered throughout the island's perimeter. The 900 sculptures are regarded one of the world's most remarkable architectural accomplishments. Especially given the challenges the Rapa Nui had to face in transporting them, Paro, the tallest statue, stands 33 feet tall and weighs 92 tons. They used to face inside the island, protecting the living Rapa Nui, but they were all toppled in the 18th and 19th centuries for reasons that no one knows about. Earthquakes, tribal warfare, and Christian conversion are among ideas that have been proposed to explain why the Moai were toppled. Many Rapa Nui were enslaved by Peruvians, and the remainder of the population was bred to extinction after mingling too much with various peoples, and now there are very few Rapa Nui remaining, yet the sculptures still stand proudly. Number 16. The Lascaux Cave. Lascaux Cave is a Paleolithic cave near Montignac-Dordogne, France, that has some of the world's most famous examples of prehistoric cave paintings. The cave's inside walls are adorned with almost 600 paintings, mostly of animals in stunning designs. Horses are the most frequent, although deer, aurochs, ibex, bison, and even cats can be found. There are approximately 1,400 engravings in the same style as these paintings, which portray the bulk of the main topics. The art is from the Upper Paleolithic era and dates from around 1700 to 1500 BC. It was sculpted by the clearly skilled hands of people living in the area at the time. Many ornate caverns have been discovered in this area, which appears to be a hotspot, although the majority of view attaches a ceremonial or possibly spiritual component to the paintings at Lascaux or any of the other sites, suggesting their maker's sophistication. The real meaning of the paintings at Lascaux or any of the other sites is still contested. In 1979, Lascaux was included to the list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites, along with other historic sites in the region. The original cave was closed to the public in 1963, as it became clear that the large number of visitors were causing, among other things, the growth of algae on the cave walls and permanent damage to the paintings. Number 15. The Unknown Purpose of Stonehenge. Stonehenge is one of the most popular tourist sites in the United Kingdom, as well as one of the world's most mysterious ancient structures. The famous stone pillars draw visitors from all over the world who stop to admire them and speculate about how and why they were constructed. However, while the site is instantly recognizable, there is much more to it than meets the eye at first glance. As archaeologists investigate this site, mystery after mystery is revealed. However, it appears that a coherent tale is beginning to form. This has been especially true during the last 10 years, though. Researchers have been examining not just the monument itself, but also the surrounding region, in the hopes of uncovering clues in this fascinating landscape of prehistoric monuments and structures. Infrared imaging and excavation have shown that Stonehenge was originally part of a complex network of buildings, including ancient burial mounds, unknown towns, processional pathways, and even gold-encrusted burial grounds. The discoveries create a picture of a world that was considerably more enigmatic and sophisticated than previously imagined during the Neolithic and Bronze Ages. Number 14. The mass grave of the Headless Vikings. Archaeologists in the English coastal town of Weymouth discovered a startling find in June 2009 while excavating a burial mound. Archaeologists discovered a mass grave containing the remains of 54 dismembered skeletons and 51 skulls in a pile within an unused Roman quarry while excavating in preparation for the anticipated Weymouth Relief Road. Many people were perplexed as to who these folks were and why they were slain in such a terrible manner as a result of this strange discovery. Archaeologists came to the conclusion that the bones belonged to Scandinavian Vikings. After conducting scientific testing and analysis, it is particularly surprising given the size of the burial, as any mass grave is a relatively rare find, but to find one on this scale from this period of history is extremely unusual, according to David Score of Oxford Archaeology. Although the exact date of the burial has not been determined, it is believed that the remains are those of individuals who lived sometime during the early Middle Ages, between the 5th and 10th centuries. The fatalities were most likely caused by, and as a result of the struggle between the Anglo-Saxons and the Viking invaders in the area. It is believed that the bones belonged to guys in their late teens to early 20s, with a few somewhat older individuals among them. Because there are no signs of combat wounds on any of the bodies, other than those suffered during the execution, it seems probable that these guys were captured rather than military personnel. There was no evidence of clothing or other personal belongings within the pit, prompting some to speculate that the men were murdered while totally naked. Number 13. Ötzi the Iceman found with all his tools. In the Tyrolean Saal Alps, on the border between Italy and Austria, a German tourist named Helmut Simon discovered an ancient mummified human corpse near the Similone Glacier on September 19, 1991. While on a hiking trip, the body is that of a guy between the ages of 25 and 35 who was around 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighed approximately 101 pounds and was radiocarbon dated to 3300 BCE. Initially, it was thought that he died as a result of exposure to the elements or exhaustion while climbing the Alps, but an arrowhead was discovered lodged in the Iceman's left shoulder during an X-ray scan in 2001, suggesting that he had most likely bled to death after having been shot. The little rocky hole where he had lain down to die was rapidly buried and preserved by glacial ice, which was slowly melting until his bones were covered by contemporary people 5,300 years after he passed away. The name Ötzi originates from the Ötztal Alps, where he was discovered, and it means Ötzi the Iceman, because they were part of the travel gear of a Neolithic traveler. The variety of clothing and accessories that were discovered with him is absolutely astounding. The Iceman's most basic piece of clothing was an unlined fur robe made from scraps of ibex, chamois, and deerskin that he sewed together himself. His clothing was made of grass braids with a fluffy hat to keep him warm, and his shoes were made of leather and filled with grass. The Iceman was armed with a little copper-bladed axe and a flint knife, which he carried with him. His limited food consisted of slowberry, mushrooms, and a few gnawed ibex bones, among other things. Number 12. Missing Swiss couple found frozen on Alps 75 years later. A Swiss couple who vanished from their property in the Alps during World War II has been discovered mummified in a glacier 75 years later. Marceline and Francine Dumoulin, 40 and 37, went missing on August 15, 1942, while milking their cows in a nearby pasture. They never saw their 6 children or returned to their relatives. During basic maintenance, a worker discovered the frozen remains of a man and a woman. The bodies were discovered near a cluster of fashionable ski resorts at 8,000 3,500 feet above sea level in the retreating San Florent Glacier. In an interview, neighboring Glacier 3000 Resort Director Bernard Shannon said, "From afar it looks like small rocks, but there were too many in the same place. When he went closer, he saw a collection of frozen items dating back several decades, including backpacks, watches, mess kits, a glass bottle, and boots." The two were frozen close together, dressed in World War II-era garb. Their bodies were evacuated from the Alps since then. Marceline Udry-Dumoulin, the couple's youngest daughter, told Swiss newspaper Le Matin that their children had never stopped seeking for them. "We spent our whole lives looking for them without stopping. We thought that we could give them the funeral they deserved one day," she stated. "Their mother, a school teacher, and father, a shoemaker, most likely fell into a glacier fissure and were preserved." The Institute of Forensic Medicine will use DNA testing to properly identify the remains, but the couple's children are certain these are their parents who have gone missing. Number 11. The Mount Owen Moa. Over 3 decades ago, a team of archaeologists were exploring a huge cave system on Mount Owen in New Zealand, where they stumbled upon a scary and unusual object. They wondered if their eyes were deceiving them, since they couldn't understand what they saw in front of them. A gigantic dinosaur-like claw still intact with flesh and scaly skin, due to their limited vision in the dark cave. The claw was in such superb shape that it appeared to have come from a freshly deceased animal. The claw was soon retrieved and delivered to the archaeological team for examination. The discovery was incredible. The mysterious claw turned out to be the mummified bones of an upland moa, a large prehistoric bird that had disappeared 3,300 years ago. The upland moa, Megalapteryx didinus, was a species of moa found exclusively in New Zealand. According to a DNA research published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, the first moa appeared 18.5 million years ago, and there were at least 10 species, but they were wiped out in the fastest human-facilitated megafauna extinction known to date. Number 10. Vampire skull found in Italy. According to an Italian archaeologist who supervised the excavation, the remains of a medieval vampire were discovered amid the bodies of 16th century plague victims in Venice. On the Venetian island of Lazaretto Nuovo, a woman's body was discovered in a mass grave. Gravediggers pushed a boulder into her head, suspecting she was a vampire, a prevalent folk belief at the time, to prevent her from biting through her shroud and infecting others with the plague. According to archaeologist Matteo Borini of the University of Florence, vampires were only one of many plausible contemporaneous reasons for the spread of the Venetian plague in 1576, which ran wild across the city and killed up to 50,000 people, according to some officials, in the lack of medical expertise. However, medieval Draculas were not swamped in Italy's famed canal city, with hundreds of Venetians dying every day. Gravediggers were likely misinterpreting bodies at various stages of decay while reopening new mass graves, according to Borini. Borini told Live Science that the stages that convert the corpse to a skeleton were poorly recognized since they happen in the tomb. After years, when the corpse had entirely transformed into a skeleton, graves were routinely reopened. Number 9. Croghan Man. In June 2003, a well-preserved Irish Iron Age bog corpse known as Old Croghan Man was discovered. Croghan Hill, north of Daingean, County Offaly, is where the corpse was discovered, and the remains are called for it. The discovery is on exhibit in Dublin's National Museum of Ireland. Old Croghan Man was discovered 3 months after Cloney Cavan Man, a comparable discovery in County Meath. The guy was estimated to be around 6 feet 6 inches tall, based on his arm spread, which was unusually tall for the time period in which he lived. Because of the man's obviously manicured nails, it was assumed that he did not work in physical labor and was thus of great rank. Wheat and buttermilk were thought to have been his final meal, based on the contents of his stomach. He did, however, enjoy a meat-rich diet for at least the 4 months leading up to his death. Pleurisy scars on his lungs show he had the disease. The guy was buried in a bog, perhaps a lake, at the foot of an old hill where kingship rights were held. According to a 2014 documentary, he was a king or prince who was sacrificed by druids because of bad weather or crops. These ancient tribes may have felt that the king's failure was to blame, and that he was to blame. The body of old Krogan man is thought to have died somewhere between 362 and 175 BC, making it almost 2,000 years old. The man was in his early 20s when he was slain, according to evidence. Number 8. The Lloyds Bank Coprolite. The Lloyds Bank coprolite is a huge example of dried human excrement discovered by New York Archaeological Trust researchers while excavating the Viking town of Jorvik, now York, in England. The coprolite, which measures 8 inches long and 2 inches wide, was discovered in 1972 beneath the site of what was to become the York branch of Lloyds Bank. It is the biggest specimen of fossilized human feces ever discovered, measuring 8 inches long and 2 inches broad. Is it possible that this monster was laid the day after Christmas? The discovery of several hundred parasite eggs in the feces implies that its creator ate primarily meat and bread, and that they were infested with intestinal worms. Andrew Jones, a paleoscatologist and employee of the York Archaeological Trust, made international headlines in 1991 when he appraised the item for insurance purposes. "This is the most exciting piece of excrement I've ever seen. In its own way, it's as irreplaceable as the crown jewels." He stated the specimen was displayed in the York Archaeological Trust's outreach and education facility, the Archaeological Resource Center, now known as DIG. It was broken into 3 pieces in 2003 after being dropped in front of a group of tourists while on display. Well, at least it's now flushable. Number 7. The Voynich Manuscript, the world's most mysterious book. The Voynich manuscript is an illustrated codex written in the Voynichese writing system, which is otherwise unknown. It was written on vellum that has been carbon dated to the early 15th century, and stylistic research suggests it was produced in Italy during the Italian Renaissance. The manuscript's origins, authorship, and purpose are all up for discussion. It's been proposed that it's an otherwise unrecorded script for a natural or artificial language, an unread code, cipher, or other kind of cryptography, or simply a pointless prank. The text is now about 240 pages long, although there is indications that more are missing. Some of the pages are made up of foldable sheets of various sizes. The majority of the pages feature fantasy drawings or schematics, some of which are poorly colored with portions of the manuscript depicting people, imaginary flora, astrological symbols, and so on. The material is written in a left-to-right direction. Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish book merchant who bought it in 1912, is the manuscript's name. Many professional and amateur cryptographers, including American and British codebreakers from both World War I and II, have examined the Voynich manuscript. None of the various ideas offered over the previous century have been objectively confirmed, and the text has never been convincingly decoded. The enigma surrounding its meaning and origin has piqued the public's interest, prompting research and conjecture. Number 6. 3,600-year-old pits full of giant hands discovered in Egypt. A group of archaeologists excavating a palace in the ancient Egyptian city of Avaris discovered a shocking find. The remains of 16 human hands were discovered buried in 4 holes by archaeologists. 2 pits, one in front of what is thought to be a throne room, each hold 1 hand. The 14 remaining hands are kept in 2 additional holes built at a later date in the palace's exterior area. There are no left-handed people among them. The discoveries, which were found in the Nile Delta northeast of Cairo, date back around 3,600 years to a time when the Hyksos, a tribe thought to have originated in northern Canaan, ruled over a portion of Egypt and established their capital at Avaris, which is now known as Tel el-Daba. The palace was being utilized by one of the Hyksos monarchs, King Kayan, during the time the hands were buried. According to Baitak, in the most current edition of the magazine Egyptian Archaeology, the hands appear to be the first tangible proof of a procedure attested to in ancient Egyptian text and art in which a soldier would give the cut-off ring hand of an opponent in return for money. Number 5. Saxe-Huaman. Sacsayhuaman is a fortress on the outskirts of Cusco, Peru, which served as the Inca Empire's ancient capital. The Incas developed the complex in the 15th century, especially under Pachacuti and his successors. They erected dry stone walls out of massive stones. The workmen meticulously cut the rocks to ensure that they fit together tightly without the need of cement. Cusco and Sacsayhuaman were both included to the UNESCO World Heritage List in 1983, gaining international recognition and preservation. The wall complex, which is perched on a high slope above the city, provides a panoramic view over the valley to the southeast. Archaeological investigations of surface ceramic deposits at Sacsayhuaman show that the hilltop was first occupied around 900 CE. Archaeologists believe that parts of the Sacsayhuaman were constructed during the Quilque era. The Imperial Inca developed this town in the 15th century using dry stone walls made of massive stones. The huge plaza, which can accommodate thousands of people, was built for social ceremonial purposes. Several of the site's big buildings may have also been utilized for rituals. The Inca recreated a connection comparable to that between Cusco and Sacsayhuaman in their remote colony of Santiago, Chile. China, the Inca stronghold nearby, predates the Spanish colonial settlement. The Huaca de China was a ceremonial ritual place. Number 4. The Tophet at Carthage. The term Tophet comes from the Hebrew Bible. It was a site in Jerusalem's Gehinnom where worshippers performed a rite including passing a kid through the fire, most likely child sacrifice according to the Bible. The sacrifices were traditionally attributed to a deity named Moloch. The Bible condemns and bans these sacrifices, and King Josiah finally destroyed the Tophet. However, allusions by the prophets Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Isaiah imply that the Tophet's rituals may have continued. Most historians agree that the Tophet's ritual was child sacrifice, and they link it to comparable incidents in the Bible and Greco-Roman sources for the ancient Phoenicians, also known as Canaanites in the Bible, and Carthaginians. Archaeologists have used the word Tophet to characterize vast tombs of children discovered at Carthaginian sites that were formerly thought to contain the victims of child sacrifice, according to Greco-Roman and biblical texts. Some historians argue that the Tophets might have been children's tombs, dismissing the Greco-Roman texts as anti-Carthaginian propaganda. Others suggest that not all Tophet burials were sacrifices. Number 3. Mysterious shackled 80 skeletons found in ancient Greek mass grave. At least 80 skeletons are encased in iron chains in a mass burial at an old Greek cemetery. Archaeologists believe they were the victims of a mass execution, but who they were and how they got there and why they appear to have been buried with some dignity remains a mystery. They were discovered earlier this year in a section of the Phaleron Delta necropolis, which was discovered during the construction of a National Opera Theater and library between downtown Athens and the port of Piraeus. Only a few people have been able to gain access to have a closer look. Archaeologists showed the remains on a rare tour of the site, some laying in a long clean row in the dug-out sandy ground, some heaped on top of one another, arms and legs twisted, jaws hanging open. They've all been put to death in the same way. They were, however, buried with dignity, head of excavations, Stella Chrysoulaki stated. Number 2. Incan child mummy. 3 Inca mummies discovered on the towering peak of Argentina's volcan Lulailaco were so beautifully preserved that they gave the ancient rite of Capacocha, which ended with their sacrifice, a human face. The remains of Lulailaco Maiden 13 and her younger companions, Lulailaco Boy and Lightning Girl, have now been discovered, revealing that mind-altering drugs were used in their deaths and during the year-long sequence of ceremonial procedures that prepared them for their last hours. The maiden's hair revealed a record of what she ate and drank during the last 2 years of her life after biochemical examination. This data appears to back with historical tales of a few chosen youngsters participating in a year of holy ceremonies, marked in their hair by variations in diet, coca, and alcohol consumption, leading to their sacrifice. Number 1. The Franklin Expedition. Captain Sir John Franklin's Lost Expedition was a British Arctic exploration expedition led by Captain Sir John Franklin that set sail from England in 1845 aboard two ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, with the mission of traversing the last unnavigated sections of the Northwest Passage in the Canadian Arctic and recording magnetic data to see if a better understanding could aid navigation. After both ships and their crews, a total of 129 officers and men, got icebound in Victoria Strait near King William Island, in what is now the Canadian province of Nunavut, the mission ended in disaster. The wreck of the Erebus was discovered in the eastern section of Queen Maud Gulf in 2014 by a Canadian search team led by Parks Canada. The Arctic Research Foundation discovered the wreck of the Terror 2 years later, south of King William Island in Terror Bay. Annual research and diving excursions are held at the wreck sites, which are now protected as a joint National Historic Site. Would you want to find any of these creepy things if you were out digging? What's your favorite theory on the pyramids? Let us know in the comments below. Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on screen right now. See you next time.